Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 15th August 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Ukraine asserted responsibility for a drone strike on a Russian supply ship in the Caspian Sea, which was transporting drone parts from Iran. Following this, then US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin convened in Alaska, marking their first meeting since Trump's first presidency. The summit, hosted at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, centered on the Ukraine conflict and its wider regional impact, specifically addressing Ukraine's territory and NATO expansion. While Trump warmly received Putin, effectively ending his diplomatic isolation, and spoke of great progress, no ceasefire or agreement to end the war materialized. Trump advised Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to make a deal and insisted he needed to get it done, while Putin flattered Trump by echoing his claims about the war. Trump also suggested that a land swap and security guarantees to end the war had been negotiated and agreed on. Both leaders offered vague statements about progress, but took no questions at a press conference after the nearly 3-hour meeting. White House officials present at the talks included Caroline Leavitt, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Pete Hegseth, and Susie Wiles. Melania Trump sent a letter to Vladimir Putin regarding the abductions of children resulting from the war in Ukraine. Many Ukrainians are skeptical about the Trump-Putin meeting, viewing Ukraine's absence as proof that the countries are not working toward a deal acceptable to them. The U.S. European Command reported that an 8-day halt in March to Ukraine aid had a tangible effect on the conflict and significant residual effects on the delivery of security assistance. Turning to the United Kingdom, Shein, the Chinese online fashion retailer, experienced a 33% surge in UK sales to exceed £2 billion in the past year, surpassing Boohoo and approaching ASOS. The company's profits climbed by 56% to £38 20 million, with £9 60 million contributed in corporation tax. The UK's Equality and Human Rights Commission ERC voiced concerns about potentially heavy-handed policing of Gaza protests, advocating for clearer guidelines to prevent a chilling effect on freedom of expression. Additionally, the UK is prosecuting 60 more individuals for supporting the banned Palestine Action Group, bringing the total detained at peaceful protests since the ban on July 7 to over 700. London schools are outperforming the rest of England due to factors such as gentrification and immigration, prompting ministers to explore ways to replicate London's academic success in struggling schools nationwide. China's economic growth showed signs of slowing in July, despite rising exports, with reduced factory output, retail sales, and declining housing prices. Officials attributed the slowdown to U.S. protectionism, real estate issues, and new factory investment policies. New home prices declined by 0.3% in July, matching the previous month's drop. Despite government support measures aimed at reviving property investment, in response to deflationary pressures, a senior Chinese economic advisor suggested easing property restrictions to encourage spending among the wealthy. President gov't emphasized protecting the private sector, promising a level playing field for private firms, safeguarding entrepreneurs' rights, and addressing challenges like overdue payments. China is increasingly concerned that the EU may be undermining its One China policy, particularly concerning Taiwan, as the two mark 50 years of diplomatic ties. Then US President Donald Trump stated that China's President Xi Jinping assured him that China would not invade Taiwan while he was in office, implying China's patience regarding Taiwan's future. China criticized visits by Japanese lawmakers to Yasukuni, shrine and a ritual offering sent by Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, viewing them as reflective of Tokyo's erroneous view. China's military accused Japan of undermining its pacifist constitution and pursuing military expansion, marking the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. China urged the U.S. to restrain its frontline forces after a U.S. destroyer entered disputed waters in the South China Sea, lodging stern representations with the United States. China expressed opposition to European sanctions related to Iran's nuclear program, which were eased after a 2015 deal that imposed restrictions on Tehran's nuclear activities. China's role in shaping the future of the Middle East is increasing as conflicts, including the situation in Gaza, expose the weaknesses of the US-led international order. China showcased its latest AI technology from over 200 companies at the World Robot Conference in Beijing. The country also hosted the World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing, featuring robots competing in sports like soccer, table tennis, and dancing, with companies like Unitree Robotics and X-Humanoid participating. Chinese researchers from Tianjin University have developed a new type of lithium battery with twice the energy density of current EV batteries, potentially ending EV range anxiety. China's aerospace engineers unveiled a high-speed vertical takeoff and landing (VTOL) drone powered by a jet engine, potentially transforming naval warfare. Chinese computer scientists at Tsinghua University have solved a 40-year-old mathematics problem related to finding the shortest paths in a network, potentially boosting performance in chip design and telecommunications. A research team in Beijing developed a miniaturized traveling wave tube, 2T, a key component for advanced radar and electronic warfare systems. A study by Tsinghua University found that China produced over a gigaton of textile fibers between 1978 and 2022. China introduced mandatory safety regulations for power banks, requiring a China compulsory certification, CCC, after fire incidents caused by faulty products. Volkswagen AG is expanding its partnership with XPeng Inc. to integrate XPeng's advanced digital systems into Volkswagen's gasoline and hybrid models in China, building on their existing EV technology alliance. Shifting focus to Tuvalu, Prime Minister Felipe Tio considered withdrawing from the Pacific Islands Forum leaders meeting after host nation Solomon Islands barred external partners, including China, the US, and Taiwan, from attending the September event. Turning to the United States, then President Donald Trump stated that China's President, Xi Jinping, assured him that China would not invade Taiwan while he was in office. Trump made these remarks before talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding the invasion of Ukraine. Furthermore, China urged the U.S. to restrain its frontline forces after a U.S. destroyer entered disputed waters in the South China Sea, lodging stern representations with the United States. United States then-President Donald Trump voiced his aspiration for a ceasefire in the Ukraine war, stressing that Russia must demonstrate a genuine commitment to ending the conflict. Trump engaged in discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska regarding the war. While no concrete agreement emerged, both leaders expressed optimism about progress toward peace. In a separate development, Trump spoke with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, whom he described as the highly respected president. Domestically, an agreement was forged to curtail the Trump administration's planned takeover of Washington, D.C.'s police department, ensuring the Metropolitan Police Department remains under the authority of its chief, Pamela Smith. This adjustment occurred in the wake of incidents involving masked federal agents arresting Hispanic day laborers. Furthermore, New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell faced indictment by a federal grand jury on corruption charges linked to an alleged affair with her former bodyguard. Critics contend that Trump's policies have heightened fear and uncertainty among Afghans seeking refuge in the US following the Taliban's resurgence. Trump's actions are also seen as undermining the World Trade Organization, diminishing its relevance and challenging the international trading system. The dismantling of USAID has disrupted the global supply chain for therapeutic food, endangering thousands of malnourished children. Regarding the Ukraine war, then US President Donald Trump reiterated his desire for a ceasefire, urging Russia to demonstrate a serious interest in ending the conflict. Discussions between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding the war took place at a U.S. military base in Alaska. Turning to Belarus, then US President Donald Trump held a conversation with Belarusian President Alexander G. Lukashenko, referring to the authoritarian leader as the highly respected president. Concerning global trade, then US President Donald Trump is seen as weakening the World Trade Organization, diminishing its influence, and posing a challenge to the global trading system. Shifting to Singapore, Temasek Holdings has reduced its investments in Alibaba Group, Holding and JD.com, mirroring Bridgewater Associates' response to fluctuating markets and increasing US-China tensions. In Puerto Rico, authorities reported that a 37-year-old man surrendered to police and was charged in connection with the recent killing of a tourist from the U.S. mainland who had traveled to the island for Bad Bunny's residency. From Vatican City, Pope Leo XIV offered prayers for a peaceful resolution to the escalating global violence. Israel is facing accusations that a military unit sought to discredit Gaza journalists as Hamas operatives, allegedly to justify targeting them and preempt international criticism over media worker death. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir sparked controversy after posting a video online taunting imprisoned Palestinian Fatah leader Marwan Barghouti, who has been held for over 2 decades for his role in anti-Israeli attacks. This act was met with strong condemnation from Barghouti's family and other Palestinian leaders. Police in Haifa made arrests at a protest against the killings of Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza. Microsoft has launched an external investigation into claims that Israel's military surveillance agency is using its technology for mass surveillance of Palestinians. The Human Rights Office has condemned Israel's settlement plan as a violation of international law, while Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has pledged to move forward with the project, with the stated aim of undermining the viability of a Palestinian state. Emergency workers assisting those trapped in Gaza City are reportedly being targeted as Israeli forces advance on the city, focusing on Al-Shifa and Al-Aqsa hospitals. Bushra Khalidi argues that Israel's new NGO registration rules contravene international law and put aid workers at risk by mandating the disclosure of sensitive information. Talks are reportedly underway between South Sudan and Israel concerning a potential agreement to resettle Palestinians from Gaza in South Sudan, though this plan has been quickly dismissed. Sedan, Israel, recorded its hottest night ever, with temperatures staying above 36 degrees C. Neighboring Jordan also experienced record-breaking heat, with nighttime temperatures in some regions failing to dip below 35 degrees C. Australia and the Philippines have begun their largest joint military exercises to date. More than 3,600 personnel are involved. Live fire drills and a beach assault are taking place near the South China Sea. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is preparing for an economic reform roundtable in Canberra. Guardian Australia won 3 Kennedy Awards. These recognize digital innovation for leaving Gaza, portrait photography by Carly Earle, and column writing by Ranjana Srivastava. An earthquake struck near Australia's east coast. The magnitude was 4.9, and there was no tsunami threat to Queensland. In legal matters, Rishi Nathwani, a defense lawyer, apologized for using AI-generated incorrect information in a murder case. This included fake quotes and non-existent case judgments. Paleontologists identified a new whale species. It had razor teeth and bulging eyes. The 25-million-year-old fossil was found on an Australian beach. Russia continues to engage in dialogue with the U.S., even under President Biden's administration, as noted by Nikolai Plotnikov of the Russian Academy of Sciences. A summit between former U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin recently occurred in Alaska, a territory once under Russian control before its acquisition by the United States in 1867. This meeting extended beyond 2.5 hours, culminating in a joint press conference. Trump asserted the existence of wide areas of agreement, but didn't provide specific details, particularly regarding the war in Ukraine, a topic discussed without Ukrainian President Zelensky's involvement. Trump also claimed Putin shared his concerns about the potential for mail-in voting to compromise election integrity. The summit is largely seen as a diplomatic triumph for Putin, potentially lessening Russia's international isolation. However, it has raised anxieties among Ukrainian and European leaders, who worry it could give Putin undue influence over the American president, particularly given Russia's ongoing military actions. The Alaska summit, addressing issues beyond Ukraine, has generated unease in Europe. During the bilateral discussions in Anchorage, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Secretary of State Marco Rubio headed their presidents' respective delegations. Subsequently, Russian state media and online conspiracy theorists launched a campaign of propaganda and disinformation. Pakistan is grappling with catastrophic flash floods caused by intense monsoon rains and cloudbursts, leading to at least 250 fatalities nationwide and in neighboring India. The Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province has suffered the most, reporting approximately 180 deaths. Residents have characterized the devastation as resembling doomsday. Ongoing rescue operations aim to find those who are still missing. Tragically, a helicopter engaged in relief efforts crashed during the operation. Climate change is believed to be a significant factor, intensifying the monsoon rains. India celebrated its Independence Day with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, pledging to safeguard agricultural interests and cautioning Pakistan against aggression. Modi also voiced disapproval of the U.S.'s 50% tariff on Indian goods, deeming it economic selfishness. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky reached out to India, seeking assistance in resolving the Russia-Ukraine conflict, citing shared values. Russian President Putin, joining other world leaders, extended his greetings to India, expressing hopes for enhanced bilateral relations. Domestically, Bihar is introducing solar-powered cold storage to help farmers preserve crops and reduce food waste. The country is also contending with the harsh realities of climate change, highlighted by recent flash floods in the Himalayan region, which have claimed lives, and a series of back-to-back natural disasters. Pakistan, similarly to India, is reeling from devastating flash floods caused by heavy rains, resulting in at least 176 deaths across both countries and many missing, emphasizing the region's susceptibility to climate-related catastrophes. The Russia-Ukraine war saw Ukrainian President Zelensky appealing to India for help in bringing the conflict to an end, emphasizing the common ground of freedom and dignity between the two countries. The United States drew criticism from India after imposing a 50% tariff on Indian goods, with Prime Minister Modi characterizing the move as economic selfishness. Afghanistan commemorated the 4th anniversary of the Taliban's resurgence, with celebrations in Kabul attended by thousands of men, while women were excluded from participating at multiple venues. Despite this anniversary, Afghanistan continues to face international isolation due to its restrictive policies against women. The Taliban seeks greater international legitimacy, bolstered by Russia's formal recognition, in hopes of broader acceptance. The nation grapples with issues like climate change, population growth, and diminished foreign assistance. Kabul anticipates a water shortage by 2030, and the government faces difficulties in resolving this crisis because of financial limitations. The Afghan Youth Orchestra, prohibited from performing within Afghanistan, now operates in exile in Europe, playing music that reflects themes of loss, hope, and the power of music. Japan commemorated the 80th anniversary of its WHAM surrender, with the emperor conveying deep remorse. The solemn occasion honored over 3 million war dead. Meanwhile, a cabinet minister's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo, a site that enshrines 2.5 million war dead, including convicted war criminals, sparked controversy. Historical denialism regarding Japan's wartime actions persists among right-wing groups. South Korea has urged Japan to increase transparency about its historical conduct. Adding to the regional dynamics, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has urged Tokyo to face its history and make the right choice on Taiwan. Economically, listed Japanese companies reported an 11% dip in quarterly profits, partially blamed on tariffs imposed by former U.S. President Donald Trump. Shifting to military affairs, Japan's maritime self-defense force destroyers docked in Wellington, participating in Indo-Pacific deployment war games with Australia, New Zealand, and other allied nations. Bolivia faces a potential political upheaval as the upcoming presidential election hints at a departure from the leftist party's two-decade rule. High inflation, shortages, and a fractured left are contributing factors. This scenario could lead to a right-wing win, marking a historic shift. Evo Morales, the former president, is urging supporters to cast no votes as he is barred from running and faces possible arrest. North Korea received praise from Russian President Vladimir Putin, who hailed North Korean soldiers as heroic in a letter to Kim Jong-un, marking Korea's liberation anniversary. Putin referenced the joint efforts of the Soviet Red Army and North Korean forces in liberating Korea from Japanese colonial rule. In South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung is advocating for the revival of a 2018 military agreement with North Korea. Lee aims to decrease border tensions by restoring the pact. He urged Pyongyang to respond positively to Seoul's efforts to re-establish trust and communication. South Africa's President Ramaphosa is urging dialogue and national unity. He aims to address the enduring issues of poverty and inequality. These challenges persist 3 decades after the end of apartheid. France is currently navigating both moments of national shame and national pride. President Emmanuel Macron strongly condemned an act of anti-Semitism involving the destruction of a memorial olive tree for Ilan Halimi. This young Jewish man was tragically murdered in 2006. Meanwhile, in the realm of gastronomy, Paris is celebrating 2 Japanese chefs. Chitsuko Kimura is the first woman sushi chef to earn a Michelin star. Kai Kobayashi is the only Japanese chef in France with 3 Michelin stars. Mali is currently investigating several military personnel and civilians, including 2 generals, for allegedly attempting to destabilize the nation. Security Minister General Daouda Ali Mohamedine has assured the public that the situation is under control. A suspected French agent is also among those detained. This crackdown follows a pro-democracy rally in May, indicating a broader effort to suppress dissent. Spain battled devastating wildfires as firefighters struggled against intense blazes exacerbated by a severe heat wave and prolonged dry conditions. The country observed a public holiday while firefighting efforts intensified. Portugal also faced widespread wildfires, mirroring the challenges in Spain, with emergency services stretched thin across the country. Greece, equally affected by the heat wave, saw numerous fires erupt, prompting evacuations and straining resources. In Spain, the cultural tradition of the siesta offers a respite from the intense heat. Mexico is preparing to welcome Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney for meetings with President Claudia Sheinbaum next month. The presidents of Mexico and Guatemala recently met to discuss mutual interests, focusing significantly on the Maya train project. Climate change in Mexico is altering agricultural patterns, with tropical fruits becoming increasingly available in Mexico City due to shifting cultivation zones. Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto used his first State of the Nation address to highlight the country's economic strength and dedication to an independent foreign policy, casting himself as a leader of reform. Simultaneously, signs of rising public discontent emerged through the widespread display of an enemy pirate flag. China has accused the Philippine Coast Guard of reckless actions, leading to a collision in the South China Sea, specifically near the contested Scarborough Shoal. Expanding its maritime activities, China has increased patrols in previously less frequented waters near the Philippines and in proximity to Taiwan, sparking worries about heightened regional instability. Air Canada is bracing for potential disruptions as negotiations with its flight attendants union falter, even after government efforts to prevent the strike. The airline is preparing to cancel 500 flights. Flight attendants rejected arbitration, concerned it wouldn't address their demand for compensation for ground duties. Singapore saw a significant legal development as Tristan Tanyi Rui, convicted of drug trafficking, had his death sentence commuted to life imprisonment after being granted clemency. In a separate legal matter, Ong Beng Seng, a well-known Singaporean billionaire in the hotel industry, faced consequences for his involvement in a scandal involving S.S. Warren, the former transport minister, and was fined us $23,400 for abetting as Warren's receipt of gifts. China is preparing to host several top Southeast Asian leaders at its upcoming military parade. The parade commemorates the end of World War II. The event is scheduled for next month. Shifting focus to the United States, policies enacted by the Trump administration are having an unintended consequence. International students are increasingly viewing American higher education as a riskier proposition. This perceived risk is driving increased interest in universities across Asia. Lebanon's Hezbollah has declared it will keep its arms, asserting that Lebanon's disarmament plan would favor Israel. The status of Hezbollah's weapons is a major point of contention, with some arguing the state should be the only armed force. Moving to Peru, President Dina Boluarte has restated the country's claim over a disputed Amazon River island with Colombia. Separately, an explosion in a high-crime area of northern Peru left 10 injured and damaged 25 homes. In Serbia, violence broke out in Belgrade as police clashed with government supporters and anti-corruption groups. Tear gas and crowd control vehicles were used by police to disperse the anti-government demonstrators. Turning to Russia, President Vladimir Putin's last visit to the United States was in September 2015, when he briefly met with President Barack Obama. His meeting with President Trump in Helsinki, Finland, in 2018, underscores contrasting approaches to contemporary global conflict. Brazil's Supreme Court is set to deliver its verdict and sentence in the coup trial against former President Jair Bolsonaro in early September, a case that has deeply divided the nation. In Haiti, the founder of Blackwater intends to deploy almost 200 personnel to aid the government in retaking territory seized by heavily armed gangs over the last year. Operation HIMAST in the Indo-Pacific region and Europe highlights the principle that security is indivisible, reflecting European governments' recognition of the Indo-Pacific region's impact on their interests. New Zealand is experiencing a significant population exodus, reaching a 13-year high, with over one-third of those emigrating under the age of 30, largely due to the economy. El Salvador's Congress has voted to extend the detention of over 80,000 individuals arrested under the state of emergency for an additional 2 years. In Malaysia, almost 3,000 government employees have been caught accepting bribes over the past decade, making them the most frequent recipients. Critics in Honduras contend that the extended state of exception has cultivated a system of impunity for law enforcement. Finally, in Sweden, a shooting took place near a mosque in Ödebro, resulting in injuries to 2 people. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.